The episode begins as Tigress contemplates the recent happenings from her last undercover mission, wondering what went wrong when Black Manta requests her presence in Kaldur's quarters. There, Black Manta informs her that Simon will restore Kaldur's mind to normal. Tigress worries that if Simon fixes Kaldur's mind, he will also have access to Kaldur's memories and will discover that she and Kaldur have been working as double agents for Black Manta and the team. Black Manta assures her that Kaldur will be safe and promises to take revenge on Miss Martian for what she did to Kaldur's mind. He then instructs Tigress to stay in the room while Simon fixes Kaldur's mind. Simon starts to mentally prepare himself before making a telepathic link. Black Manta leaves, and when Simon attempts to go into Kaldur's mind, Tigress shoots a small dart at Simon's neck in fear that their undercover mission will be discovered. As Simon starts connecting to Kaldur's mind, he suddenly feels dizzy. He figures out that Tigress drugged him and goes for an attack. He connects to Tigress's mind and discovers her real identity as Artemis, the daughter of the former assassins, Lawrence and Paula Croc. He continues to slam Tigress onto the walls before passing out. Meanwhile, Black Manta sees the whole ordeal and rushes in to check. Tigress pretends to have known nothing as to why Simon lashed out at her. She implies that Miss Martian must have left some kind of telepathic virus on Kaldur's mind. Black Manta concludes that they may encounter the same problem if another telepath attempts to fix Kaldur's mind. Tigress says that Miss Martian can help and suggests letting her take Miss Martian. Black Manta agrees, but only if Deathstroke will join, as he thinks Miss Martian is too dangerous for Tigress to go alone. Meanwhile, the team members gather at Star Labs for Miss Martian's attempt in reading Green Beetle's mind to prove that he is an ally. Although Miss Martian is hesitant, she finally agrees when Green Beetle assures her that she doesn't have to worry. Nightwing says that it is the only way to verify Green Beetle's intentions. Miss Martian establishes the telepathic link, and Green Beetle immediately discovers that Miss Martian had a negative experience with a mental probe. He volunteers his thoughts to make it easier for Miss Martian. Afterward, Miss Martian confirms that Green Beetle's claims are true and that his intentions favor their side. A commercial for the popular fruit drinks from LexCorp, and the Reach suddenly flashes. Green Beetle explains that fruit drink contains chemical substances which cause people's addiction to the beverage. He also adds that once people consume enough, the chemicals will make them placid, preventing them to revolt. Nightwing agrees and says that it was the same deduction as Atom and Flash's. Green Beetle senses that the team hasn't completely trusted him, so he proceeds to tell them another fact about the fruit drink. Its additive allows the Reach to track individuals with metagenes, making it easier for the Reach to harvest and weaponize metagenes. Nightwing mentions that this information did not appear in their deductions and proceeds to tell Green Beetle that this should not be made public as their credibility is relatively low. Afterward, Nightwing asks Green Beetle if he has a place to stay on Earth. Green Beetle takes a human form and assures Nightwing that he will find himself a place to stay in Taos. Meanwhile, Lagoon Boy asks Miss Martian for a talk. She agrees and suggests a place in Chicago where his uncle stays. Everyone leaves the room, leaving Blue and Green Beetle staring at each other. Lagoon Boy and Miss Martian teleport to Chicago. As they make their way to the apartment, Lagoon Boy loses his patience and stops her. He directly asks her about her relationship with Connor. Miss Martian tries to reassure him, but Tigress and Deathstroke suddenly appear. With telepathy, Miss Martian converses with Tigress, who explains that she needs to help Kaldur. Tigress asks Miss Martian to pretend they are enemies so that Deathstroke will not have any suspicions. While Lagoon Boy takes on Deathstroke, Miss Martian fights Tigress. Deathstroke manages to injure Lagoon Boy and proceeds to put an inhibitor collar on Miss Martian, who immediately loses consciousness. Now that their target is acquired, Tigress and Deathstroke walk aboard the Manta Flyer back to the Manta sub. Outside the Star Labs, James confides to Green Beetle about his worries that the Scarab will take control over him. Green Beetle suggests some ways to control his Scarabs, like meditation and proper training. He also mentions that he can control his Scarab using his Martian abilities. When James learns about this, he presses Green Beetle to do it with him. Green Beetle disagrees at first, but later agrees when James insists. At the Manta sub, Miss Martian awakens and is immediately ordered by Black Manta to fix Kaldur's mind. Manta threatens her that Deathstroke watches her every move out of her telepathic range aboard the Manta Flyer, and if she does anything against them with her ability, Deathstroke will trigger a bomb on the collar. Manta orders Deathstroke to disable the collar's effect on her telepathic abilities and leaves. Before she proceeds, Miss Martian tells Tigress via telepathy that Kaldur's mind may see her as a threat, leading to further damage to Kaldur. She adds that destroying the mind is easy, but restoring it is nearly impossible. Tigress tells her to take her into Kaldur's mind to help her. The scene changes. Miss Martian and Tigress find themselves in an ocean filled with ruins of Atlantis, which represents Kaldur's memories. Tigress starts to drown, but Miss Martian reminds her that everything is not real. Suddenly, they get attacked by Chala. Meanwhile, Nightwing and Superboy visit Lagoon Boy in a hospital in Chicago. Lagoon Boy insists to rescue Miss Martian, but Nightwing reveals that Kaldur is not an enemy as he is working on a deep undercover mission with Artemis. Nightwing explains to the confused Lagoon Boy that Artemis is alive and is posing as Tigress to infiltrate the enemy forces. Lagoon Boy lashes out at Nightwing for being deceived, but Superboy backs up Nightwing and explains that he must have a good reason for hiding it from everyone. As they leave, Nightwing thanks Superboy for backing up his decision. Superboy, however, seems angry and sternly tells him that due to his secrets, Miss Martian fried Kaldur's mind thinking that he had caused Artemis's demise. He adds that the situation has already escalated and might cause them the lives of Miss Martian, Artemis, and Kaldur. Back in Kaldur's mind, Tigress easily overcomes Chala's attacks. Miss Martian, however, starts to succumb to her guilt. Tigress tries to find Kaldur herself and arrives in a ruin where she finds the faceless Kaldur. She manages to convince Kaldur that his broken memories can be restored. The two swims back to Miss Martian, who is on the verge of losing to Chala. Miss Martian apologizes to Kaldur, whose face is not restored, and holds his hands to help him rebuild his fractured memories. Suddenly, Tigress is interrupted when Black Manta arrives and puts a hand on her shoulder. Miss Martian informs him that it will take some time for Kaldur to fully recover. Black Manta then accuses her of stalling as it has been 6 hours since Miss Martian started, but Kaldur recognizes him, which makes him believe that Miss Martian is indeed making progress. He asks Tigress for a word outside the quarters where he tells her that Miss Martian will be terminated once the safety of Kaldur is guaranteed. Back to the Star Labs ground, Impulse comes upon Green Beetle touching Blue Beetle's Scarab, which he finds suspicious. He intervenes, but James assures him that everything is perfectly fine and that Green Beetle successfully silenced his Scarab, giving him full control over it. On the next episode, the former Reach captives, Ty, Asami, Newt, and Virgil are in a testing room at Star Labs with Dr. Wilcox. After Dr. Wilcox orders Virgil to levitate the whole can instead of just the lid, Virgil slams the lid onto the wall and demands a break from their hours-long testing. As they make their way to grab lunch during their 20-minute break, they walk past Eduardo Dorado SR's office where they overhear him arguing with his son Ed, who wants a cure for his meta gene. Eduardo wants to prove his theory that the gene is opportunistic, which opposes Ed's request. Ed later adds that he regrets wanting to see his father. He storms out of the office and sees the others, who pretend to have heard nothing. Ed dismisses the topic and they go on to grab lunch. Ty complains about how Star Labs is no different from Reach and says he cannot take their situation anymore. Virgil then says they won't have to, as they will be breaking out later that night. Meanwhile, a shipment of cargo containing Amazo's body parts salvaged from the Hall of Justice arrives in Zeta Lab. Eduardo informs Adam Strange that it will be temporarily stored in Star Lab's vaults. Later that day, after their testing session, Newt confronts Virgil about his plan to sneak out and adds that they are better off in Star Labs for their safety. However, Virgil is determined and proceeds to the exit door with Ed, Ty, and Sam, who appears to be confused. Refusing to let them go, Newt triggers the alarm and all the doors automatically lock, which prevents the other four to leave through the fire exit. As the alarm resounds throughout the lab, Virgil reveals that he never came out with a plan and asks Ed to teleport them out. Ed angrily says that he can only teleport himself and only along sightlines, thus making it impossible for him to teleport from a building with no doors or windows. Ty, who has been asked by Virgil to use his powers to remove the room and carry them out, reminds him that he cannot control his powers. The guards arrive and corner them. Burton Thompson orders them to stand down and come with them. They refuse. Ed teleports behind them while Sam uses her power to tackle the guards. They refuse to listen and Virgil knocks Burton out using a fire extinguisher. The building then suddenly loses power, which unlocks the doors. Sam informs them and they make their escape. At El Paso, James is having a conversation on the phone with Nightwing, who informs him of the juveniles' escape at Star Labs. Nightwing is asking him to convince the runaways that Star Labs is the safest place for them, which he disagrees with at first since Ty is one of his friends. Although reluctant, James finally agrees and flies off to find the runaways, who are at a local bus depot. Virgil has called his parents, which leaves Ty shocked as he isn't planning on returning home. As Virgil is not a runaway like the others, he contacted his family to wire him some money so they could board the bus going to his hometown in Dakota City. When Ed asks how are they going to find a cure at Dakota City, Virgil confesses that he doesn't know and doesn't want a cure either. He uses his powers to get a drink from a vending machine and proceeds to drink it. Ty stops him, saying it was Reach's product. As they prepare to rest for the night, Sam notices that Wilcox and a group of Star Labs guards are approaching the bus depot. She warns the others and Virgil tries to wake up the sleeping Ty, who manifests a gigantic astral form instead. It tears off the roof of the depot and throws it to the Star Labs crew. Just then, Blue Beetle arrives and tells them to stay calm. Ty crushes Blue Beetle and grabs his friends before running away. Blue Beetle tells Wilcox to return to Star Labs, then flies off to chase after Ty and the others. In a forest, Ty stops and puts down his friend. His astral form vanishes and wakes up at the same time, thinking that he was dreaming. Blue Beetle catches up with them and tells them that the only safe place for them is at Star Labs. They must go back before the Reach snatches them up again. The runaways acknowledge the Blue Beetle is a good guy, but it is not enough for him to understand their situation. Blue Beetle then retracts his armor, revealing his real identity as James. He tells them that he has the Scarab while showing it on his back. He explains that the Reach created it for him to gain powers, but also control him. Although they know that James is one of them, they still refuse to be lab rats again and plan to go to Virgil's parents instead. James scolds Virgil for putting his parents' lives in danger and suggests that he can help them in some way. He then leads them to Green Beetle. On their way, Blue Beetle receives a call from Nightwing asking for his assistance at Star Labs due to a break-in by Red Volcano, who has come for the remains of Amazo. Blue Beetle orders the runaways to stay put and wait for him to come back before flying off. Ed wants to go back to the lab as he worries for his father's safety. The others then decide to join in. They arrive at Star Labs, where they find Blue Beetle being hammered down and trapped under the ground by Red Volcano. They hurry toward Blue Beetle as Red Volcano enters the Star Labs through the hole in the ground. Ty then volunteers to save Blue Beetle while the others proceed to stop Red Volcano. Ty focuses, calms his inner mind, and projects a gigantic astral form again. He plunges his hands into the ground to save Blue Beetle. Inside Star Labs' vault, Red Volcano fails to find Amazo's head and attempts to take Eduardo's head instead. Before he can reach Eduardo, Ed appears and teleports with his father out of the vault to Eduardo's surprise. Ed can now teleport with someone. They meet Virgil and Asami, then Red Volcano appears. Using her powers, Sam propels herself toward Red Volcano, but she only bounces off, leaving Red Volcano unscathed. So is Virgil, whose attacks get reflected back at him. As Red Volcano prepares to attack, Ty grabs him through the ceiling and hurls him in the air before Blue Beetle deals a plasma blast which sends him hurtling to the ground. However, Red Volcano comes out undamaged and creates huge rock spikes from the ground which pierces through Ty's astral form, causing it to disappear. When Red Volcano catches Blue Beetle in a ball of lava, Blue Beetle deals with a counterattack using his sonic cannon. As Blue Beetle continues to raise the cannon's power, Virgil tries to stop him as the sonic waves make the Star Labs building crumble. However, Blue Beetle is determined to defeat Red Volcano, so he launches another sonic cannon. This leaves Virgil and the others no choice but to save the bystanders inside the building. The fight between Blue Beetle and Red Volcano continues as the runaways rescue everyone from the building. Red Volcano then traps them inside fists that emerged from the ground and threatens Blue Beetle to surrender in exchange for the teenagers' safety. Blue Beetle remains unnerved and attacks Red Volcano again while the others free themselves with their own powers. Blue Beetle's actions confuse Ed as he thinks that Blue Beetle planned on sacrificing them. Blue Beetle gets caught by Red Volcano. He uses his hand to drill into Red Volcano's chest, then pushes a sonic cannon into the hole, causing Red Volcano to overload and explode. After the fight, Blue Beetle returns to the runaways to keep his promise of bringing them to Green Beetle. But the media suddenly arrives and gets his attention while the runaways flee from the scene. The runaways return to the destroyed bus depot, thinking that no one will come back there looking for them. As they think of their next step, a car pulls up next to the depot. Inside the car, Lex informs Mercy that their plan to attack Star Labs turned out just as planned, and says that it is now time to seal the deal before stepping out of the vehicle. Lex approaches the runaways and reveals that he knows every one of them. He tells them he has been watching them for weeks, and that he is the one responsible for the power interruption during their escape from Star Labs. He adds that the arrival of the press is also one of his doings to divert Blue Beetle's attention. The runaways still doubt Lex's intentions, and Ed tells him that they know Lex has been working with Reach to formulate their drink. Lex then admits he suspects that the Reach is only using him for their own purpose, and so he convinces the runaways to team up with him while he provides their safety. The episode ends as Lex assures them that on his side, the runaways will be given the chance to choose their own destinies. The episode begins in a courtroom at Rimber as Superman defends the Justice League in a trial for an alleged attack on the planet. Superman points out that the League did not intend to cause any harm, but the prosecutor presents evidence to oppose Superman's statements. Superman adds that they are under the influence of supervillain Vandal Savage, and when asked why Vandal Savage did such a thing, he admits that the League still has no clue. The trial gets interrupted by a commotion from the audience. Holographic screens suddenly pop in front of everyone, declaring the Reach's takeover of Earth. Jon Stewart telepathically explains to Martian Manhunter that the Reach were conquerors formed over a millennia ago whose forces are so strong it took the entire Green Lantern Corps to stop them. The Reach signed a treaty with the Guardians of the Universe, preventing them to claim a world unless they are invited. However, the United Nations has welcomed Reach with open arms, and so no Lantern may ever return to Earth, which is now a property of the Reach. In the crowd, Vandal Savage tells Mongol that the Reach's influence on Earth can affect the decision of who will rule the galaxy. Mongol rises and leaves the room. Aboard the Watchtower, Captain Atom informs Superboy, Nightwing, Aquaman, and Black Canary of an incoming threat to Earth passing in front of Re, one of the moons of Saturn. Nightwing exclaims that the object appears to be huge as it passes not in front, but behind at the Reach ship, the ambassador orders the object to stop and change course. A male voice answers and denies their request, saying that his reason for bringing wrath upon Earth is Reach itself. Meanwhile, at Star Labs, Green Beetle claims to have access to the Reach database because of his Scarab and explains to Captain Adam Strange, and Nightwing that the approaching threat is called the Warworld, a massive artificial satellite. It is created by a now extinct alien race as a doomsday weapon that can be activated by a crystal key thought to have been long lost. However, the Warlord's current commander, Mongol, manages to find the key and hails the weapon to destroy Earth as he sees the planet as a threat to his plan of taking over the whole galaxy. As the Warworld's effects on Earth start to endanger lives, Secretary Tseng conducts a press conference at the United Nations building to assure everyone that the Reach will not abandon Earth even with only one unarmed satellite ship at hand. Aboard the Watchtower, Captain Adam contacts Mongol and states that he wishes to negotiate on behalf of Earth. Mongol denies and points out that Reach's control over Earth is a threat to his long-term plans. He emphasizes that Earth must be grateful for its destruction as it will suffer more at the hands of the Reach. He then activates the Warworld's main weapon, a huge laser cannon, and fires it directly at Earth. Dr. Fate appears from a portal and intercepts the laser beam before it reaches Earth. The laser reflects back to the Warworld, destroying the cannon. As Mongol opens fire with the Warworld's missile system, Rocket, Captain Adam, Green Beetle, and Captain Marvel emerge from the portal to protect Dr. Fate and destroy the weapons while the team infiltrates the Warworld. The team is divided into 3 squads. The Alpha Squad, which is composed of Arsenal, Superboy, Wolf, and Wonder Girl, tasked to attack Mongol. The Beta Squad, Beast Boy, Blue Beetle, and Impulse assigned to the Crystal Key Chamber, and the Gamma Squad, Supercycle, Guardian, and Bumblebee tasked to shut down the power core. Meanwhile, Robin and Batgirl fight for the Delta Squad to provide cover fire for the League members fighting outside the Warworld. As the Beta Squad makes their way toward the Crystal Key Chamber, several battle drones attack them. Blue Beetle reports that they have been spotted, and so have the Gamma and Alpha, who are now battling drones. The Alpha Squad reaches the control center where they face Mongol, who seems unimpressed by the team. Superboy attacks, but Mongol easily deflects their attacks and knocks them off one by one. Now that the Alpha Squad is down, Mongol starts launching thousands of missiles toward Earth. Outside the Warworld, Dr. Fate conjures a protective force shield that destroys some of the missiles while the other League members try to destroy as much as they can. With reports that the combined League's and Earth's military efforts are not enough to withstand the missile attack, the Reach ambassador orders the mobilization of the Reach fleet from underwater to protect their so-called investment on Earth. The missiles were neutralized, enough to keep the Earth safe in the meantime, but some of the Reach ships have been destroyed. Meanwhile, the Gamma Squad reaches the power core while the Beta arrives at the key chamber. Guardian wishes Bumblebee luck as she enters the power core. Supercycle deals with the battle drones as Bumblebee tries to disable the power core by targeting certain circuits, but the power keeps getting rerouted. Guardian yells that Bumblebee should reroute it to somewhere useful, giving her an idea to target another part of the circuit. At the Warworld's command center, Mongol calls in a group of battle drones to deal with the Alpha Squad, who slowly starts to regain consciousness. Suddenly, Mongol's controlling device on his head begins to overload as Bumblebee successfully shuts down the power core. Seeing the dazed Mongol, Superboy orders the rest of the Alpha to attack and subdue Mongol. The squad manages to knock Mongol out, and Wonder Girl restrains him with her lasso. Outside, the Warworld's missile launch suddenly stops and Superboy informs Captain Adam that they have captured Mongol. The battle drones also start to deactivate while Blue Beetle takes the crystal and hides it for safekeeping. Meanwhile, the Reach ambassador watches the scene from a camera on Blue Beetle's perspective. At the Watchtower, Nightwing radios the team and congratulates them. He tells them to gather together as their ship will take them back home. The Beta and Gamma squads meet at the entry point, later joined by Delta as they wait for the Alpha Squad, who is having difficulty getting the hefty Mongol to the entry point. Alpha Squad arrives as Bumblebee and Guardian share a kiss of victory. Now that the whole team has gathered, Blue Beetle suddenly changes demeanor and attacks everyone with his sonic cannon and staples. Arsenal, who is terrified of being captured again, opens the hatch, and Sphere gets sucked out of the Warworld while the others struggle. Blue Beetle destroys the lock, which automatically closes the hatch. Blue Beetle attacks the fleeing Arsenal with his staple, but Superboy blocks his attack, allowing Arsenal to escape. As soon as everyone has been knocked out, Blue Beetle checks the crystal key in his possession. The scene shifts to the screen on the Reach headquarters as the ambassador watches everything through Blue Beetle's eyes. On the next episode, Nightwing travels to Warworld through Dr. Fate's portal and asks Blue Beetle about what happened to his team during the attack. Blue Beetle apologizes and proceeds to tell a story far different from what exactly happened. He says that a boom tube suddenly appears beneath them and everyone else except him disappears. Nightwing confirms a boom tube activity and tells Blue Beetle to return home to rest. Blue and Green Beetle enter Dr. Fate's portal to Earth. They step out of the portal in James' home in El Paso, where Blue Beetle gives a nod to Green Beetle before changing back into James. Green Beetle then leaves. At the Manta sub, Deathstroke informs Black Manta that Miss Martian's progress on Kaldur remains slow, still far from recovery. With not much patience left, Black Manta storms into the room and gives Miss Martian 24 hours to cure his son. As soon as he leaves the room, it is revealed that Kaldur has fully recovered and is only pretending while they think of a way to save Miss Martian. They plan to sneak into the control room to deactivate Miss Martian's collar and carry on from there. Meanwhile, Sportsmaster and Cheshire infiltrate the Manta sub as it passes through a blind spot curve. They plan to avenge Artemis's passing and terminate Aqualad and Black Manta. As Artemis goes on to carry out their plan, Cheshire breaks into Aqualad's quarters through a ventilation shaft and attacks Aqualad. Miss Martian deflects the attack, and before she could explain everything, Deathstroke, who monitors the situation in Kaldur's quarters, disables her telepathy. Deathstroke quickly informs Black Manta, who orders to activate the alarms and sends the troopers to Kaldur's quarters. Tigress proceeds to the control room to find the collar controls while Sportsmaster blocks Black Manta, who is racing toward his son's room. Sportsmaster manages to knock Black Manta off, but a group of Manta troopers arrives and shoots at him. Their attempt to take Black Manta to safety fails as Sportsmaster takes them out with his flashbang discus. Back in Kaldur's quarters, Cheshire misunderstands Miss Martian's intentions and confronts her. The Manta troopers arrive, interrupting their conversation. Cheshire manages to keep them out by destroying the door's control with her sword. Deathstroke, who is still monitoring the fight, instructs Tigress to head back to Kaldur's room. Miss Martian, who is in a laser blaster tub with Cheshire, shoots the camera, giving her the chance to explain everything. Before she can clear the misunderstanding, Cheshire knocks her out. Aqualad then reveals the truth about his condition and tells Cheshire that Artemis is alive, but Cheshire doesn't listen and puts him in a chokehold while pointing her sword at his neck. Meanwhile, Nightwing investigates alone inside the Warworld, where he discovers tracks left by Blue Beetle's stapler and the damaged airlock. Near the airlock, he finds Robin's Birdorang and scans it. He then sees some nanites belonging to the Scarab on its surface, which implies that the Birdorang must have scraped Blue Beetle's armor. In the Manta sub's control room, Tigress manages to find the collar control and disables it, but Miss Martian is still unconscious, unable to explain the situation to Cheshire. Tigress heads back to the quarters, trying to contact Miss Martian to no avail. She comes across the fight between Black Manta and Sportsmaster. Black Manta orders her to take his place in the fight as he rushes to his son's room. Sportsmaster is evidently stronger than Tigress, who gets pinned down on the floor with a javelin. Black Manta arrives in Kaldur's quarters and decides to blow the door off. He finds his son lying underneath the broken door and attempts to approach him, but Cheshire attacks and knocks him down with an electrocuting disc. Before Cheshire can harm Aqualad, Miss Martian regains consciousness and immediately creates a link between her mind, Aqualad, Tigress, Cheshire, and Sportmaster. There, she reveals that Artemis is alive and is posing as Tigress to infiltrate the light and the reach with Aqualad, who pretends to have terminated her. Cheshire finally believes, but Sportsmaster doubts, thinking that it's just one of Miss Martian's tactics. To convince him, Artemis tells Miss Martian to release her and Sportsmaster so she could prove it herself. As soon as they are released from the link, Tigress breaks free and disarms Sportsmaster with a move he had taught her. When he finally believes, Tigress asks his father one favor: to destroy the control room to keep her and Aqualad's secret. Miss Martian secretly communicates with Cheshire telepathically as she slams both Cheshire and Black Manta against a wall. They pretend to be enemies, and Miss Martian releases Cheshire while saying that the enemy of her enemy is a friend. The plan goes well as Cheshire leaves the room. Miss Martian threatens to finish off Black Manta and slowly approaches him when Kaldur slams her away from his father. As Black Manta embraces his son, Miss Martian escapes the room. Sportsmaster meets up with Cheshire after destroying the control room. At the airlock bay, when they prepare to leave, Deathstroke appears and attacks them, preventing them from leaving. Cheshire jumps in to save her father when Tigress appears and tackles her, pretending they are fighting. As they continue to fight, Miss Martian appears and pins Deathstroke and Tigress onto a wall before telling Sportsmaster and Cheshire to leave. She approaches Deathstroke while threatening him with the ways she can do with him for fun. But Deathstroke drops explosives which make her stumble on the floor. Tigress then telepathically orders her to escape or else she will get captured again. Miss Martian apologizes to Tigress before she throws Deathstroke toward her. She phases out of the Manta sub and assumes her mermaid form to breathe underwater. She stares at the escaping Deathstroke and Cheshire before swimming away herself. After returning home, Cheshire, now Jade, informs her grieving mother that Artemis is alive. Later that day, Black Manta tells Vandal Savage and the Reach Ambassador that his son, Kaldur, is now back in good condition. The ambassador congratulates him as the day appears to be good for both of them. In a warehouse, Nightwing watches a broadcast of the Reach Ambassador presenting Blue Beetle as a hero who single-handedly saves the Earth from Warworld. The episode ends as Nightwing realizes that Blue Beetle has betrayed the team. Silently raging inside, he snaps Robin's Birdorang he found earlier at Warworld. The episode begins at Warworld, where Black Beetle complains about the refusal of the ambassador to attack the Justice League, which makes the crystal key useless. He places it inside a protective container. Black Beetle then blames Mongol for the destruction and humanity's discovery of their invasion fleet. The scientist later reveals that the team has been captured and kept inside chambers in a stasis state, but they should still worry about one loose end: Arsenal, who has escaped Blue Beetle's previous attack. Black Beetle assures the scientist that Arsenal will soon be cut off. Still, inside Warworld, Arsenal, who is being pursued by the Reach soldiers, tries to contact the team in the Watchtower but receives no response. On Earth, the ambassador conducts another press conference to talk about Blue Beetle's heroism and the ties between humans and the Reach. When a young girl asks if the Justice League was unable to save Earth, the ambassador answers her the League seems to attract many outer space bullies to Earth. He then assures them not to worry, as he promises to safeguard the Warworld until humanity is strong enough to have full control over it. He adds that the Reach will protect the Earth's new weapon for now, claiming it to be their gift to the planet. The runaways, Virgil, Ty, Ed, and Asami, start to destroy things that are connected to Reach, from posters and signboards to a delivery truck and water tower with Blue Beetle's face on it as Earth's new champion. They then receive a call from Lex, who offers them a way to deal some harm to the Reach. Lex directs them into a safe house in Taos and communicates with them through a laptop. He gives them the Father Box, a device that can open a boom tube anywhere, including Warworld. He later informs them the team has been captured and that they can save the superheroes using the Father Box. The runaways are reluctant to go. They think that if the superheroes have been captured, it is most likely that they will end up likewise. Virgil convinces them that the Reach least expects them to be there, and they will use that to their advantage. Besides, the team has helped them before. After Lex's instructions on how to use the Father Box, Asami orders it to take them to Warworld. Meanwhile, Arsenal tries hacking a control panel to communicate with the others, but is stopped by the patrolling Reach soldiers. Due to sending counterattacks, his arm loses power. He grabs one of the soldiers' stingers, then escapes to charge his cybernetic arm. The four runaways boom into the Warworld, where they are unpleasantly greeted by a group of Reach soldiers. They pretend to surrender but later launch an all-out attack, quickly taking down all the guards. The fight triggers the alarm and more soldiers arrive while they retreat in pursuit of Superboy. Just then, Arsenal, who has finished charging his arm, hears the ensuing battle between the runaways and the Reach soldiers. He watches as they knock down all the soldiers. Asami then orders the Father Box to track Superboy. Arsenal secretly follows. At the Warworld's docking bay, Nightwing, accompanied by Miss Martian, decides to investigate the location where the team has disappeared. As the two apologize to one another for their fault in Blue Beetle's treachery and Green Beetle's hidden agenda, they suddenly hear a loud clang from outside the docking bay. They prepare to fight, but Sphere appears. Miss Martian happily embraces Sphere and asks if she could take them to Superboy's location. Sphere bleeps in response and transforms into Super Cycle. On Earth, at the GBS Studios dressing room, the scientist informs the Reach ambassador via the holographic communicator about the breach at the Warworld by the runaways. The ambassador then authorizes Black Beetle to relieve his post at the Crystal Chamber to terminate both Arsenal and the runaways. He later gets called by the studio staff that the interview with G. Gordon is about to start. G. Gordon greets the ambassador for their second time meeting in the show. After their casual greetings, G. Gordon confronts the ambassador with lies he fed on Earth. Footage from the previous press conference where the ambassador claims to have only one unarmed ship in space appears on the large screen. G. Gordon lashes out that the ambassador's statements were pure lies, as an entire fleet of warships has been hidden under Earth's ocean. He adds that there must be other secrets Reach has been hiding from humans. Back in Warworld, the runaways arrive in a large containment chamber where they see Superboy and the rest of the team locked in stasis cells. Black Beetle suddenly arrives and attacks them, starting from Longshadow, whom he had taken down by ramming himself onto its head. Ty's astral form dissipates as Black Beetle attacks him with a sonic cannon. The rest starts to scatter, but Black Beetle takes them down except Ed, who manages to teleport away. Suddenly, a laser blast hits Black Beetle's back and knocks him off. Arsenal steps out of the vent and rushes to close the door before the Reach guards arrive. He tosses a stinger to Ed and instructs the others to keep Black Beetle off balance. On the other side, at the Crystal Chamber, a boom tube appears behind the soldiers who are monitoring the battle. Electrified bolas suddenly fly out of the boom tube and take down the soldiers. Deathstroke then steps out and approaches the crystal key. Using the Father Box, he opens the crystal's protective case. Unaware that the crystal key has been stolen, the fight between Black Beetle and the runaways continues while Arsenal tries to figure out a way to open a particular stasis cell. As he cannot open it with the control panel, he forcibly frees Mongol by destroying the cell. Black Beetle sees Mongol and blames him. Fueled by rage toward the Reach, Mongol attacks Black Beetle, who abandons his fight with the runaways to fight Mongol. This gets Black Beetle distracted, giving the others the time to rescue the team while Arsenal searches for the crystal key. He discovers that the key has been stolen, but he is able to find Guardian's shield, Wonder Girl's lasso, and Robin and Batgirl's utility belts. With the team free, and while Black Beetle deals with Mongol, everyone prepares to escape. Arsenal informs them of the guards waiting on the other side of the doors he closed earlier. They take on their fighting stance and the door opens, but they only find bodies of unconscious soldiers laying on the floor. They see Nightwing, Miss Martian, and Sphere, who have already defeated the soldiers. As they have no time to waste, Arsenal suggests they retreat first before Black Beetle defeats Mongol. The team and the runaways proceed to the docking bay. Nightwing compliments the runaways on their achievements even without proper training and guidance, and tells them they can be members of the team once they are back on Earth. Arsenal suddenly butts in and complains about Blue Beetle's betrayal of the team, but Bumblebee cuts him off, saying how Arsenal endangered everyone's life by impulsively opening the airlock. Arsenal defends himself and says Bumblebee should be grateful for his actions instead. Nightwing agrees but dismisses Arsenal from the team and demands that Arsenal proves himself to be a team player first before the team takes him back. As Nightwing gets back to the conversation about the runaways' acceptance on the team, they decline and offer Arsenal to join them instead. Arsenal accepts, and a boom tube appears underneath them. Nightwing notices the father box and tries to stop them, but they teleport out, leaving Nightwing confused and surprised by what happened. With Arsenal, the runaways teleport into their hideout in Taos. On the laptop screen, Lex congratulates them on their success in dealing a hard blow to the Reach. He then notices that they had brought Arsenal with them. Seeing Lex, Arsenal lashes out at the runaways and tells them Lex was the one responsible for him being detained for 8 years and his missing arm. He adds that Lex used the runaways as a distraction to steal the crystal key. Lex admits it but says that both parties had gained favor from the circumstances. Learning that they have been used, Asami tosses the father box on the laptop while Lex is watching before using a Kai blast to destroy both the father box and the laptop. Now on their own, Arsenal and the runaways head out to do things outside of others' influence. On the next episode, the fight between Black Beetle and Mongol continues, with Black Beetle finding it hard to defeat Mongol alone. Green Beetle suddenly arrives and helps Black Beetle to lock Mongol again inside a stasis cell. They go on to check the crystal key but discover it to be missing. Black Beetle adds that since the ambassador refuses to authorize an attack on the Justice League guarding the key chamber, all they can do is take patrol on the grounds. The team reaches the headquarters in Bloodhaven. Impulse mentions that the team should deal with Blue Beetle first, as the situation with the crystal can wait. As Impulse speaks, Nightwing turns on the television where Blue Beetle can be seen on the news. Cat Grant reports that the Unsecretary General plans to give the International Medal of Valor to Blue Beetle for his bravery during the Warworld attack. Robin scoffs about Blue Beetle getting all the recognition even after being a traitor, but Impulse defends him and says that James is only a victim of the Reach and they must free him before he takes over Earth as a pawn to the Reach. In Metropolis, Cat Grant interviews Blue Beetle, who has captured Toyman for trying to steal a vault at the bank. Blue Beetle delivers his speech to the crowd, portraying himself as the savior of Earth now that the Justice League is not around. It is later revealed that the ambassador is behind Blue Beetle's actions and words, remotely controlling him through the Scarab from the Reach ship in New York. Impulse and Batgirl observe from afar before running off. Later that night, as Blue Beetle makes his way back to James' home, Batgirl and Impulse suddenly appear and attack him. However, Blue Beetle seems to be a lot more powerful than the two combined. He pins them on the walls while the inside voice of James insists to leave, but the ambassador orders the Scarab to finish off Batgirl and Impulse. James tries to stop the Scarab but fails as he watches the war blades sprout from his arm. He helplessly watches as his body approaches Impulse. Before the Scarab slashes the poor hero, an energy field suddenly envelops him. The Scarab tries to cut the field to no avail. The ambassador watches from the Reach ship and orders the Scarab to analyze the force field, revealing that the more the Scarab fights to break out, the more it strengthens. The Scarab uses his sonic cannon, but Zatanna infuses the field with her magic, making it impossible for the Scarab to get out. The team then takes him to the Byllian Temple, where the Reach least expect them to bring Blue Beetle. Inside the facility, they are confronted by Queen Bee's soldiers, Devastation, Mammoth, and Shimmer. With their combined efforts, except Rocket, who cannot assist them due to being focused on the force bubble, the team manages to trap their enemies inside a hole made by Shimmer during an attack. They proceed to the ruins of a temple where a giant Scarab can be seen carved on a wall. Zatanna aims to summon someone who can turn the Scarab off mode. She puts herself in a trance as she begins the ritual while Rocket holds the force field intact. Green Beetle, sent by the ambassador to terminate the team, arrives, but Super Cycle blocks his attack. Batgirl traps him inside a ring of fire, triggering his Martian weakness. However, Green Beetle phases out of the fire and blasts his sonic cannon toward Impulse and Batgirl. A gecko lands on his head and transforms into an elephant, crushing him. He easily breaks free and attempts to finish Beast Boy, but Bumblebee appears and shoots him in the face while Wonder Girl restrains him with her lasso. Robin then delivers a flying kick to his face. Rocket reminds Zatanna they do not have much time left as Green Beetle continues to battle against the forces of the team. Still, in trance, Zatanna summons Isis, whose power reconstructs the mosaic and activates the obelisks in the corner of the platform. A bright light suddenly engulfs the temple. Zatanna instructs Rocket to release Blue Beetle. As Zatanna starts the cleansing ritual, Green Beetle aims his weapon directly at her. Before Green Beetle discharges his weapon, Impulse grabs the lasso on Green Beetle's waist and throws Green Beetle in front of Zatanna to block Green Beetle's own attack. Upon contact, Green Beetle and Blue Beetle fall on the ground as a pillar of light emerges in the middle of the platform. It quickly expands, engulfing both Blue and Green Beetle. In the Reach ship, the Ambassador watches as the cameras from Blue Beetle and Green Beetle's perspectives get destroyed. The scientist then declares that both their pawns are now off mode. The Ambassador silences the scientist when she starts to blame him for not listening to her warnings. Back at the temple, after the cleansing ritual, the Scarab shatters and Zatanna releases herself from the trance. To check if the ritual succeeded, Zatanna deactivates both Blue and Green Beetle's armor. As soon as the armor disappears, Jaime and Br Zoom confirm that they are now in full control. The spell worked, and the Scarab congratulates Jaime, who seems to be reluctant to the Scarab's intentions. They thank Zatanna for giving them the ability to have control over their own body again. While on their way back, they explain to Blue Beetle the origin of the Scarab and how they discovered the temple. Zatanna adds that their findings inside the temple determined the way to turn off the Scarab and were used by Dr. Fate to train her to perform the ritual. Jaime asks the reason why they had kept the truth from him. Zatanna answers that it took her months to learn the ritual, meaning they cannot risk letting the Reach know about the temple. In Bloodhaven, Miss Martian and Lagoon Boy arrive from Poseidonis after Miss Martian breaks off her relationship with Lagoon Boy. Nightwing informs them of Blue and Green Beetle's freedom. Being down with the breakup, Lagoon Boy proceeds upstairs to watch TV. Miss Martian then asks Nightwing about Superboy's whereabouts. She looks disappointed when Nightwing answers that Superboy is out with Wendy Harris. The episode ends at the Byllian Temple with Queen Bee instructing her disciples on the Light's plans for the Reach, the League, and the team.